This is the Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast as a service to the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves former collegiate athletes facing medical needs and financial challenges. Your tax-deductible contribution will change the life of a former college sports hero. Please give online at negreats.org. And now, here's your host, Brett Wetton.
You're listening to the Nebraska Greats, a podcast produced by the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves collegiate athletes facing a medical need and a financial challenge. Learn more or give generously online at www.negreats.org. And so we're just going to do a little housekeeping here. Welcome back to the NGF podcast. I'm your host, Brett Wetton, and I've had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the Nebraska Greats Foundation, and we put this podcast together basically having interviews with Nebraska athletes that have roots here and understand what it is to be a Nebraskan. Here in Nebraska, we take care of our neighbors when they're in need, and so this organization, this nonprofit organization, does exactly that. We take care of any former letter winner from any of the 16 colleges and universities that have a financial need / medical need. We take care of that, and so. Without further ado, I want to give a huge shout out to Two Brothers Creative with Matt Tompkins. Matt is our producer. We really appreciate him doing that today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to current U.S. Olympian Maggie Malone. How are you, Maggie?
I'm so good. It's great to be here and be a part of a Nebraska Home Roots podcast.
Well, thanks for bearing through our little housekeeping there in the beginning. And you know what, Maggie, you and I've actually known you your entire life.
I was just thinking that when I was getting on, I was like, man, Brett probably knows me before I was even born.
And so just a little background. So Maggie, I knew your mom and dad before they were married. And I had the pleasure of your dad coaching me in football. And, I'm very grateful to your parents because I had your dad slapping me around in football and said, hey, Brett, you've got a future in this. Do you want it? And then I had your mom who took me to people like Carol Frost and showed me how to throw the discus and the way through and the shot put and all that stuff. So, but you know what? It's not about that. It's about you. And I want to kind of bring this back into getting into our conversation, Maggie. I'd like to do three things. One, I kind of want to go through your time in Geneva where we were together, growing up together in a great small town, and kind of the pedigree, right, of your dad playing football at Nebraska and your mom's, great track background and qualifying for the Olympics in 1970. And then we'll kind of get into your college career and kind of as you're getting into the Olympic conversation and actually making the team. And then the last part of it is just your current training as you prepare for Tokyo 2021 competition and just some things from that. So let's jump right into this. So let's talk about Geneva, Nebraska. What say you, Maggie? What say you?
Yeah. Man, I love Geneva. And I don't know if I would have always said that growing up in a small town. You kind of have that like teenage angst. You're like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. And now I look back after being, in Texas for 7 years or so. And now I'm in Alabama now. I look back and I'm like, man, I miss Geneva. I miss just the community specifically and just how slow of life it was. And I loved what you said earlier where it's like Nebraskans take care of each other. I mean, you probably know better than anyone. Because my parents were so busy in coaching, we had like a million babysitters and parents that were taking care of us and, just pushing us around. My mom always tells the story. She's like, one day I had taken you to like 5 different babysitters because we had like a track meet, a volleyball meeting, like this and that. And all of a sudden I see you coming across the gym with somebody and I'm like, who is that person that has my 3 kids right now? And so, but that's Geneva. And, I think we all do take care of each other. And, when I made the team in 2016, I think I said, I like blacked out when I was talking to the announcer, but I just said, I come from a town with 1 stoplight. Like this is unbelievable to be on a stage like this. So I do miss Geneva with a lot of my heart and just the people all across the board.
The people are just so amazing. Maggie, so, what I've always wondered about, I know your dad and mom's background, what's it like kind of being kind of in the vacuum of their pedigree, their experiences in football and track and field, and learning from that, and then that transition that takes place to where now you're your own entity. You are now performing and preparing and all the things we have to do as professional athletes. How has that journey happened for you? And do you have any kind of commentary about that for us?
That's a great question. I would say,
That's why I asked it, Maggie.
What?
That's why I asked it.
That was good. No, I would say growing up, I very much was comparing to my mom's just domination through sports in Nebraska. And it was tough to navigate that, especially going into high school. And you have coaches that knew my mom and knew stories of my mom and knew just her absolute success that she has had, time and time again. And then going to football coaches and them talking about my dad and the success that he had had. And so I think growing up, I was like, I just want to be as good as my mom. Like, I just want to be an athlete that they're proud of. And I think it was all self-inflicted. My parents, and they'll push you, but it's always with so much love and grace. And I think I always tell them, like, you guys did it right, because I never felt like I had to be the best of the best at everything. I think you guys prioritize the process versus the result, which I think is really important. Even today in my, as I'm a professional athlete now, it's the process, not the result, that matters. And I think, like I said, going through high school, I was always like, I need to be as good as my mom. Like, I want to beat my mom. And I had success, but it was fun because I got to do it with my mom, because she was my track coach, and got to celebrate with her and also with my dad. But I think, I look at parents today, and so many parents will talk to me and ask me, how did you get here? Like, how did you have success? And everybody always is like, my kid's going to be a one sport athlete. Like, they're going to be so focused on baseball or on basketball. And I love that my parents had me in everything. And they said, you're going to do volleyball, track, softball, speech, drama, choir, literally everything, which is a benefit of being in a small town as well. But I think what parents now, compared to what my parents had, they're so singularly focused on, my kid has to be the best at baseball. And so they're going to do this from age 9 to 19. And I think they're missing, going back to the process, they're missing so much growth that happens in the sharpening that happens from other sports. And I'm so thankful that my parents, and I think it's because they had success, Brett. Like, I think it's because both my mom she understood what it took to be great, and so did my dad. And they knew when to push and when to back off. And so I'm really thankful for that. Now, I'm not saying it was always perfect, and I'm not saying that head to head. But
I know the feeling.
yeah. I was gonna say it's my dad's pretty stubborn, but
no, not at all.
He's only made me run a tire every once in a while.
Well, I mean, Maggie, you bring up two really good things. So one, let's go back to just give only a little highlight a little bit with your mom. Yeah. She qualified for Olympics in 1970, correct?
Yes, I think that was the time. 1970, 1980, right in there. I can't remember exactly.
I think it's 19. I have the your Wikipedia page, because you're a U.S. Olympian, you have your own Wikipedia page. So, I just think that's really interesting that she'd qualified. But I think there was something going on there, turmoil at that time, that it didn't actually happen, correct?
Yeah, so it was the year that we boycotted. So she
that's right.
actually got to compete because the United States was boycotting. I believe it was in Russia, I want to say.
I want to say Russia too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I knew communist country, but yeah, so she never actually got to compete. However, she did get to carry the torch, I believe, for a junior Olympics or youth world or something in that. So she was able to travel in track and field a lot growing up, but that was the one thing that, she just didn't get to compete in, which is crazy because of how good she is. I think she's the only person who, I don't know if you know the name Jackie Joyner-Kersee, but
I do.
Yeah, I think my mom was like one of the only people that's ever beaten her. And she's so humble about it. And I met Jackie, and I told her one time, I was like, hey, my mom is Nancy Kindig. And she was like, you are kidding me. Like, your mom is Nancy Kindig. Like, oh, I love her, which is so cool. Like, just an awesome track family there. And just to get to see the scale of athlete she was.
That's right. And we love Nancy, and I have many fond stories of her. I'm very grateful for all the things she did for me in high school. And, moving on to your dad, he was part of the national championship, 70 national championship with the Cornhuskers, right? 70, 71.
Yeah, right in there. You know dates better than I do. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to mess it up, but our founder of Nebraska Greats Foundation, Maggie, is Jerry Murtaugh, and he was on that team. He was a linebacker.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's kind of cool how all these things, and I hope that's what comes out in our interview today, is that how everything kind of interweaves together between you and me and your parents and Nebraska, and it's a beautiful story. The other thing I just want to touch base on quickly, what you just said, is I remember your dad focusing us on the process, right? And in football, it's the kicking game, it's offense and defense, and these are things you need to do. And so for you, what were some of those process things that your mom and dad kind of reiterated to you that you needed to do? Do you have any examples for our listeners?
Absolutely. And like I said, I did every sport, which again is a benefit of being a small town. And I would say the process pieces were, dad coming home and saying, hey, let's go outside and let's work on some dribbling for a little bit. Like, let's play a game and let's work on the skill piece versus, going out there and just competing all the time. It was, no, let's work on this. Let's work on character education was huge with my mom and dad too. But very specifically, my mom brought anything that had to do with grit and perseverance and anything that comes with sports. She was bringing that into the conversations when we were, playing catch outside, or, we were really dumb, but we would throw balls up on the roof, have them come down, and we'd throw it over the roof back to each other and all that kind of stuff. But she would bring in any sort of like character piece to it too, where you could make the connection where it was like, hey, if you say that you want to be an Olympian someday, that's great. But guess what? That means that you need to continue to persevere when you don't get the spot on the basketball team, or when you don't get to be the starting catcher on the team, or whatever it is. And so I think they were always focused on, how can I help you improve and foster the will, which I was and I still am, a go-getter. And how do I foster that without just saying, here's the end result. And if you don't see the end result, then you failed. It was never that. And I'm so thankful for that. And I've definitely, dealt with that now too, where I have high expectations and sometimes you do feel like a failure. But at the end of the day, I can lean back on that and say, okay, well, I didn't succeed in the way that I wanted to, but I learned so much from that experience.
And you're able to break it down yourself, right? And you see it in its parts.
Exactly. Yeah, and exactly what you're saying, like just like the kicking game, running game, that's exactly what dad would do too, where it's like, okay, we're going to focus on the fundamental pieces here, which is going to result in you getting, whatever goal you have.
That's right. No, I think it's excellent. And for us in a small town, we have the advantage of playing in all these different sports and being involved in choir and the L Street Singers, which we won't go into on this podcast.
Are we both in the club of the L Street Singers?
We are, and I didn't want to bring up the fuchsia cummerbunds and the and the costumes we had to wear, the jazz fingers that Mrs. Aitnam talked to us about. But
she's my favorite.
She's my favorite. The other thing I remember of your mom too is that she was really big into grammar. Like, use multi-syllable words, to this day, that's really stuck with me. So, and I'm sure she'll be listening to this later, as well as your dad, Danny, and we love them both. And we're very grateful for everything they've done for us.
Well, I would say too, they love you, Brett. Like, anytime we were just at dinner and I told them that I was going to be on this podcast, and I just have to say, like, you, for whatever reason, my mom and dad just are attached to you and just love you and your story. So I'm excited to be a part of this too.
So grateful to say that they did so much for me. And it wasn't until I went in the NFL that I really realized, what they were after. But, that was just my lot in life. And so let's move on to this a little bit. Let's kind of move into college, because I knew you went to Nebraska and then I knew you went to Texas A&M. And so just kind of give us a walk through that, Maggie. After you left Geneva, how did that all work out? What events were you in and how'd that go for you?
It's a great question again. And you're going to say that's why I asked it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question.
So we don't have javelin, obviously, in the state of Nebraska.
Right.
So in high school, I was a long jumper, triple jumper. I did the 4x4, unfortunately, and the 200. So those are
Did you do hurdles? Didn't you do hurdles too?
I did. My sister was more of a hurdler than I.
Audrey. Yeah, that's right.
Audrey was definitely more of a hurdler. I ate crap one time in a competition, and I said, I don't really want to do this again. So anyway, all that to say, I was recruited as a heptathlete, which was what my mom was.
Right.
And Coach Pepin, I think, had, here's a fun story. Coach Pepin, when I was born, he created a letter of intent for my mom for me. Which I think is so funny. And so my mom has that like in some of her files, that like my letter of intent, like on the day that I was born, which
That's
I think.
fantastic.
But anyway, all comes full circle. I get recruited by Coach Chris Grimes for the heptathlon.
Yep.
I think that they thought I was going to be as good as my mom. And I'm built more like my dad than my mom. My dad would always say I would be a linebacker, where I think
great linebacker. You would have been a great linebacker.
And I think they were looking for more of like a wide receiver. And so I was talented, but I was honestly like pretty average, but worked really hard. So anytime, I did win state in long jump and triple jump and on our 4x4 and whatnot, but it was all because I just worked really hard and I didn't have a crazy amount of talent. And
yeah,
so,
multi-state champion. Yeah, just let's just run over that. That wasn't a big deal, by the way. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. That is Nancy Kindig Malone's work, though. She's so good. But I anyway, so went to college and was learning the heptathlon, which is 7 events, javelin being one of the 7. Now, right. I went to Nebraska as going into redshirt because, I wasn't going to be the most talented. We already had 2 multis who were very talented. And so I came in as like that third person, was going to work really hard. My goal, Brett, going to college was that one time in my collegiate career, I would make it to the national meet. Like my goal was like, I could get to nationals and I could be an All-American one time. Like that was my goal. And so my freshman year, I'm redshirted all of the indoor season, most of the outdoor season. And one day my coach, Chris Grimes, comes out to me and just says, hey, you're picking up javelin pretty quickly. We don't have a women's javelin thrower. If you can throw past this cone on Friday, we'll take your red shirt away and you can throw at Big Tens next week.
Wow. I did not know that.
And
wow.
I was like, okay. And so I went out, threw past the cone, have no idea how far the cone was. I just knew that I threw past it. And he's like, great, you're in. Coach Pepin gave the green light, like you're good. Went home, like got a uniform. I'd like put it on that night. I was so proud because obviously my mom was a Husker. My dad's a Husker. I had like had a fulfillment. I was like, I'm a Husker. And went to Big Tens and ended up getting third at Big Tens, which
whoa. Back it up for a second. You threw past the cone,
yeah,
and then you went to the Big Ten meet and you got third.
And I got third, yeah, which was like the highest, I think, placement that a Husker had gotten in javelin, like women's javelin.
That's
and
amazing.
I had no idea. So now we're in this crazy scenario where it's like, okay, is she a javelin thrower or is she a multi-eventer? Because I could get a lot of points in the multi by just throwing the javelin and then kind of not coast, but I could be average in the other events. Well, did a multi at like Kansas Relays and was like, not great. Had to run the 800. I was like, I'm out. This is not fun. And then from that point, I had qualified for regionals. So also just know that I had no idea how the NCAA system worked. So I didn't know that there was like a regionals to get to a nationals and
right.
All of this. I didn't know anything. And so after I got third at Big Tens, that qualified me for the regional meet, which means there's 2 regions in the United States. All the colleges on the West region are here, on the East region are here. You're all fighting for a spot to make the national team. Right. So I don't know what place I got, but I made the national team. So going into college, my goal was to make nationals one time. Like I thought my 5th year, senior year was when I was going to do it. And so went to nationals. I think I got 10th. Which like to me, I was like, I don't really care. Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm in Eugene, Oregon. I'm an All-American. And then from that point, things in our hometown were different. My parents, who had taught for 30 years or so, all the ins and outs of being in a small town. Dad asked to leave as football coach and then as athletic director, and my mom kind of the same thing. Just wasn't a great situation. And truly, I'm a woman of faith, so I believe God was moving in our lives, and I really do think He was directing our next steps, which was to move to Texas, which is where my dad is from. And so I get a call from my mom like the week after nationals, and she's like, "Hey, your mom and your dad and I just took jobs in College Station, Texas." And I was like, okay, why? And it happened to be my dad. So my dad's best man in his wedding, his name is Robert Jegerin. We call him Uncle Robert. He is a coach, and he had worked with my dad for years in Texas. And so when all of this was happening with my mom and dad in Geneva, he called and just said, "Hey, we have 2 openings, one track and field, one football, and here are the placements. Would you guys be interested?" And so all right, we're in. They move. Okay, so get this. 3 days later, I am sitting at the Nebraska All-Star basketball game. I'm sitting there. My mom is on the board of whatever. She's on the NSAA board or whatever. So she's working it. I'm sitting at this basketball game. I get a call from my coach who recruited me, Chris Grimes, who taught me the javelin. He says, "Hey, Maggie, I wanted you to be the first person to know. I just took a job at Texas A&M, which is in College Station, Texas." Okay.
Wow.
3 days later, I was like, what? Okay. Insane. Like my family just moved there. My coach just moved there. And then he says, he goes, "Maggie, I'm a heptathlon coach. I've taught you almost everything I know in javelin. I want you to look up who the Texas A&M javelin coach is." And I was like, okay. So I look him up. His name is Juan de la Garza. Everybody calls him Chico. He looks exactly like how he sounds, or, he is a Chico. I look him up. He's a 2-time Olympian in the javelin. He's had the most All-Americans, national champions in the javelin, both men and women, in the NCAA history. He's like the king of javelin. The javelin whisperer is what people call him. And so Brett, listen, my family leaves, my coach leaves. I now have an opportunity to be working with one of the best javelin coaches in the world. And Texas A&M women just won a national championship the year before. So all this to say, I go to Coach Pepin, which was really hard. And I just said, "Hey, I feel like I'm supposed to be at Texas A&M. I don't know why, but I just feel like my whole world just moved there, and I'm not going to go against what I think God is telling me." And so he said, that's great. I'm really happy for your family, but Maggie, I want you to stay another year. So he didn't release me to transfer. So how it worked at the time was you had to be released by a coach to leave. He was like, "I don't want to release you this next year, but what I will say is if you stay and compete for us this year and you still want to leave after your sophomore year, I'll let you go, no questions asked." And I was like, all right.
That's fair.
So go into that next season. I end up winning the Big Ten championships. I end up getting 4th at nationals. I have a pretty solid foundation. I love Nebraska. I'm like, how can I leave? Everything is going so great. Like, how do you leave? I'm projected to win nationals the next year because I just got 4th. The 3 girls ahead of me had all graduated.
Right.
And so I sat there and I just was like, I still feel like I'm supposed to go, which is really hard. And after that, I took a visit to A&M, saw my family. I was just mesmerized. I was like, this is where I need to be. So ended up transferring for my junior year, had a terrible junior year, just absolutely crapped the bed. Like it was terrible.
And big changes, Maggie. I mean, you had big changes, right? I mean, come on, what do you expect? Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. A huge change. But what was great about it was my sister, Audrey, which I think you also know.
I know very well.
Yeah, she was a freshman the year that I transferred. So we both got to throw javelin at the same time at Texas A&M, which was incredible. To be with my sister on the track team was insane.
And Maggie, she had a very good career in the javelin as well, didn't she?
Great career. I think she got third at nationals. She threw 57 meters. Like she was phenomenal too. She probably was better than I was, but she'll agree to this. I just worked harder than she did.
Sorry, Audrey. We didn't mean that. We're not throwing you under the bus.
I love you, but I will say that she's way more talented as an athlete. I just think I just worked really hard. But so she's not throwing anymore. But anyway, so I go there after freshman or that junior year. That whole summer, I'm like, well, I am not going to feel like this again. I got like 9th at nationals. I got in 4th the year before. I was embarrassed, so embarrassed. And I was like, I'm never going to feel like this again.
Good motivation. Yeah, that's right. Good motivation, Maggie. That's right.
And I worked my butt off. Like I started training July 1st, 2015. I did not take a day off until I made the Olympic team August of 2016. Like I literally worked out every single day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, every single day. And I lost 20 pounds. I was like, got in the best shape of my life and ended up making the Olympic team that year. So it paid off. And that was, they always say your biggest setbacks are your biggest motivators to get better and set you up for the biggest success. That's exactly what happened.
Well, Maggie, a couple things that come to mind. I mean, obviously God is the author of our story, right? And so I just get chills when I hear you talk about that. And thanks for sharing your faith. I think it's super, super important. Yeah. And I think the other part of this too is for some of our younger listeners, hopefully they're downloading our podcast, is that, this requires a lot of work. It doesn't happen by osmosis, and you're building upon things. I mean, I'm sure one of the things that was going on for you is also the technique side, right? So here you are with the Javelin Whisperer, right? Talk to me a little bit about the technique that you were being taught by the Javelin Whisperer, and then we're going to go to just a quick break here, and we'll come back to the last segment.
Yeah, so Chico broke down a ton of bad habits that I had created while at Nebraska. Not that they were teaching me the wrong things, but he has such a specific mindset for javelin. He did it for so long as an athlete himself. He knows the feelings, which is rare for coaches. Like if you personally know what it feels like, you can coach it, I think, at a higher level than most. So I went to Chico and he broke me down in every possible way, which was extremely hard. But he gave me the motivation and the biggest pep talk I've ever had that year that I failed. And he said, Maggie, I know that this hurts right now, but I promise you are going to throw over 60 meters next year. And I guarantee you that you will not feel like this. And he stuck with me and he believed that. And I was like, you're out of your mind. There's no way. Through like 40 some meters. That's a 20 meter gain. And he was like, I don't care. I see it. And I know that you're going to do it.
Well, and he was a 2-time Olympian too. Did he mention to you anything about thinking that you'd be a contender to make the Olympic team?
Not to me. He probably did to somebody else, but not to me. He knew it would have freaked me out.
That's fantastic. So Maggie, we're going to take a quick little break here. The podcast is produced on the behalf of Nebraska Greats Foundation. We provide support to qualified former letter-winning collegiate athletes who have medical needs and a financial challenge. Learn more at Nebraska or negreats.org. Again, we're back here with Maggie. We're having a fantastic conversation. We've kind of gone over the prep background in Geneva and some of the pedigree with her parents, Danny Malone and Nancy Kindig Malone. And we've kind of moved into the college section. Now I want to kind of turn this towards the last part of our interview. And Maggie, this interview has just been spectacular for me. I am smiling on the inside here. And so we've just let off with you talking about this recommitment after having a really difficult year. So walk us through, get us a little closer to now you're becoming an Olympian. Because, and just a little background here, like, as guys, you always say, hey, I was an All-American, or hey, I went into the NFL. We all think we're big and tough. Or your dad's like, I won a national championship with the Huskers. It's like, then you walk in and I'm like, hey, fellas, that sounds great and everything, but I'm a U.S. Olympian. And it's such a higher level that we just all have to get on our knees and bow to you, Maggie. And that's if I could get on my knees right now, I would bow to you that you are an Olympian. So walk us through, just give us a walkthrough of this Olympic experience. It's just got to be so amazing.
Yeah. So I'll just say up front, I did not anticipate making an Olympic team. That wasn't even on my radar. Like I just didn't even think about that going into that next season after the big failure season. My goal that whole year, this is what you'll learn about me, Brett, is that I set my bar real low.
Oh,
My,
please. No, you're
my
modest. That's good.
yeah. My goal going into that season was to not get ninth place at nationals. Like my goal was like, if you get eighth or above, you're doing great. And I went into that first meet through 60 meters, which was again what Chico had told me the year before. And I was sobbing at the end of it. I was like, what in the world? Which then propelled me into, hey, you could probably win nationals, which you could also make this Olympic team because the stars are aligning because it's an Olympic year.
Right.
So just I guess if you were talking prep for that, I did a lot of mental work, which I still do. And obviously put in so much physical work was breaking down my body physically. But I do think the mental aspect is what got me through that season. And also, going back to the faith piece, like I just was like, God, like whatever you want from me, I will continue on this path. Just tell me what you want. And so continue just to compete and had a great season and just absolutely surprised me in so many ways. So the way that track and field works is that in order to make the Olympic team, you have to hit the A standard, which means if you throw this distance, if you run this time, then you are accepted into the Olympics. So I had not thrown that until the NCAA championships. So at the NCAA championships, I threw the 62 meters, which was the standard, the A standard.
And Maggie, that's like 204 feet, right? I mean, give some of our listeners like an idea of what that is.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I gotta switch back and forth. But yeah, it's like 204 feet, which then solidified that I would make this Olympic team.
That's amazing.
And I was like, holy cow. And so then even backstory to that, Brett, I had gotten hurt the Monday that we got to Eugene, Oregon. I had a back spasm when we were doing a stupid lift. And I was literally bedridden from Monday to Thursday morning and couldn't do anything and had to compete Thursday afternoon. And so again, grace of God, like God was so with me. I had so many people praying for me from Geneva. My mom had like a whole like prayer chain going around. And so thankful for everybody that did that and ended up throwing the Olympic standard that meet, which then led into, okay, we have the Olympic trials. If you get in the top 3, you're good to go. And went into that meet and ended up winning, which I was shocked because I am the new kid on the block. And, Kara Winger, who I admire so much, she's the American record holder. She's been in the sport forever. She's a 3-time Olympian. I was competing with her, whose videos I had watched since I was 19, starting the javelin. Ended up, I think she got second at the trials. But it was incredible. I never would have ever had that in my mindset that I would ever be an Olympian. Like that just wasn't even a consideration.
Well, and it couldn't have happened to a better person, right? I mean, I think I've known you your entire life, and I think so many of us are so proud of you. Don't we have Maggie Malone Day now in Geneva, Nebraska?
We do, but it's just, oh my God.
Yeah, Maggie Malone Day. It's so spectacular, and we're just so proud of you. And so walk us through the opening ceremonies in Rio. What I'm trying to provide for our listeners of this podcast, and I hope we have some younger folks listening to this because it's really important for us to look up, right? Yeah. And what are some questions I should be asking about the whole Olympic process, the opening ceremony? I mean, you're on the world stage. We're not in Nebraska or Texas or the United States. It's the entire world, Maggie.
Yeah.
Walk me through.
It's think about the entire world in like a 2-mile radius. Like it's like everybody is right there. Every athlete you've ever looked up to is right there. I can look back now. So I'm 27 now. I made the team when I was like 21 or 22. And I can look back at 22-year-old Maggie and say, you were not ready. You just weren't. And I don't think I could have prepared for what was going to happen. I'd never competed internationally. I was by myself. I didn't have my coach. Chico didn't go with me. So it was just like a whole new experience. It was, I was like bright-eyed, everything. I was taking in everything. When one of the best things about the Olympics is that you get to talk with athletes and learn from athletes that you've admired your whole life. So one of my fondest memories is sitting in the dining room with a bunch of throwers, one being Ryan Krauser, who's the Olympic champion in the shot put.
Yep.
And just sitting and listening, and everybody's talking about their training and their mindset. It's just, and just even their personal lives. It's what do you do for fun? We're all getting to know each other. And it's those are the memories that I will always hold on to. And then you have somebody coming from Germany, and then somebody comes from Sweden, and then somebody comes from China. It's this whole group of athletes, and we all share a common thread. And it's cool because a lot of times you do feel as an athlete that you're sometimes on an island where you're man, I want somebody to relate to a little bit more. And so such an incredible opportunity to be with people who get what you're going through every single day, and understand the grind that it takes to get there. And then to also get to celebrate each other. In that I got to see the gymnasts. I got to watch Michael Phelps' last race, in person. I got to just see athletes utilize and glorify God with the gifts that they were given. And I took that and I was I'm going to do the same thing when I compete. And I did not compete well, I will say that. But you know what? I was there, and I think I didn't know how to prepare. There's so much going on. There's so much stimulation. Yeah.
It's a whole nother level.
It is. Right? It's a whole level that you didn't even know existed.
Yes. I am actually very familiar with that. So walk us through your current training. You're in Alabama, and I'm just so grateful that Wednesday was your day off, because I know that you have to keep your regimen. I kind of feel like it's one of those, for me, it's a faith thing too, right? It's this is lining up perfectly, and this is just a spectacular interview. So walk us through some of your training. I know Gatorade's sponsoring you now. I think Nike's sponsoring you. I don't know. I should ask for an autograph uniform or something.
No.
On eBay for $20,000. But nonetheless, walk us through that. And you're getting ready for Tokyo in 2021, correct? Or for this year, right?
And I will say Nike's not sponsoring me anymore. So if anybody else is out there as a sponsor, I'm all for it.
No, Nike. That's it. I have a friend at Nike. I'm going to call them. I'm going to change that for you. If not, then we're going to go to somebody else I know. Maggie, I'm on it for you. Free of charge, okay?
Perfect. No, so breaking it down. All right. So I have moved to Alabama, moved here in 2019. I started a training group here, again, God moving things, called the USA Javelin Project. So I came out here because I found a coach that I really wanted to work with. Between 2016 and 2019, I was going through, I wanted to quit the sport, to be quite honest. It was really hard to train by yourself. You feel lost. You don't have a team. You don't have facilities. You don't have anything that you normally had. I was also injured. I hurt my back. I hurt my foot. I was just this sucks. And so I got my master's while I was doing that, and I was training, but not really competing as much. Went through some mental health stuff, ton of therapy, which has helped a ton. And so then in 2019, I was I need to leave College Station. I feel like it's time to leave Chico. And I see this coach that I've always admired. I really want to work with him. And so I contacted him at a track meet, and I just said, hey, would you train me? I haven't competed in a while, and I think you're the coach that I need right now. Right. And he said, yeah, I would love to. And I said, that's great. Now, how about 6 other people? Because I had this idea to create a training group, and this happens all across the country. You got sprinting groups, you got jumps groups. And I was there's nothing for javelin. There's no throwers groups. And so I contacted people that I really wanted to train with. I talked to my boyfriend, he was a thrower at A&M also. He throws javelin, and we just started strategizing. And I was here are people that I would like to throw with. Who would you want to? And so we reached out to them, and everybody moved to Birmingham, Alabama. And we started training at Hoover High School. I don't know if you're familiar with Hoover, but they were on MTV a while ago. I guess they had a show with football. I don't know, but it's a huge high school. And they've been unbelievably kind to us to let us train there. And so we have been here since 2019, went through COVID, couldn't compete obviously in 2020. But what my training looks like now is I train in the mornings from 6:30 to about 8:30. I go to work from 9 to about 4. I work at a company called Wild Spark. It's a leadership development company. I love it. And then I train again from about 4:30 to 7:30 or 8. Yeah. So split up that training. I got a strength coach out in Arizona named Malcolm William. He is phenomenal. He has been I have no words for him. He has transformed my body. And then Tom with the technique side, my coach, the coach that I came for, he is also a 2-time Olympian, I believe. He was a former American record holder. So he gets the feeling piece. Phenomenal technique coach. And so that combination has been awesome. Working with the group has been awesome. And I've been in 2 meets now. So finally gotten to compete. The first meet, I threw 61 meters. I don't know how far that is in feet, but it's the best opener I've had. And then I went to Texas Relays 2 weeks ago, and I threw my personal best, 62:38.
Which is over 200 feet.
Right track.
That's over 204 feet, right? What is that? 200? I can't remember. 206?
Yeah, somewhere around there. But surpassed what I threw in 2016 when I made the team. And so now, if people want to be praying, I want to hit, they raised the standard. So if you remember me talking about the Olympic standard, they raised it to 64 meters. So I need 1.7 meters to lock it in.
All right. We are going to get the prayer chain going. I have a feeling you're going to get that quite easily, Maggie.
Yep.
So, what's also interesting, I think for our listeners too, Maggie, as I hear you talk about this, is there is a big psychological component to all of this. I mean, what's between your ears maybe the most important thing you have, because it's not just about, your own progress. It's not just how you deal with, hey, I had this goal and then I didn't make it. And then how you deal with that and trying to let that stuff go, or, whatever it may be. It's super, super, super important. And I had experience with that obviously in football as I left college, but I really love that you kind of give us some insight into that, because super, super important to keep this tuned up right? Do you have anything to add to that, Maggie?
Yeah, I think it is the most important piece of all of this, because I think it's easy to put your body through a lot of physical, training. I think it's easy to do that, but the mental piece I think is much more difficult. And so I work with a mental coach. He's in Texas. We Zoom every week. We do a ton of meditation. We do a lot of visualization stuff, and a ton of breathing just to stay focused and learn to live in uncomfortable situations, which is going to naturally happen when you're going into a competition. Whereas before I would be like, it would consume me with the anxiety. I've learned a lot on how to just work through that and be okay with those feelings and actually utilize that. What he told me last week, he was like, did you know that anxiousness is like the same feeling as excitement? It's just the thought that is in your head that triggers it. So he's like, it literally produces the same thing. So like, if you're excited, like you can like amp yourself up and go. Whereas like anxiousness is actually producing the same chemical that you could utilize to launch the javelin. And so just the mindset and all of it has been huge. And I think I'm so thankful for him. Again, I have a great team around me. I got my mental piece. I got a nutritionist in Hawaii. I got somebody in, my strength coach and my technique coach. And that group I call them the Avengers, because they truly are like my Avenger superhero team to keep me going.
No, I absolutely love it. And back to your mental coach, it's like the whole release of dopamine, right? So it's a stress response by the body, right? And so, and I remember old coach Danny Malone always talking about, how we'd go watch a movie in the library and that would relax us, and then we'd visualize. And as we circle up and kind of end this interview, Maggie, it's just, we're just so proud of you. I love the insights of everything. We're so excited for you for Tokyo 2021. this year. Some of the things I took away from this, and I hope our listeners have, doing the process over the results, right? What's the process? You can always break things down to its simple parts to understand it. The multi-sport thing, obviously take care of each other, baby. When you're taking care of everybody else, right? It just goes better, right?
Yes.
And that's what we're doing in Nebraska Greats, having the faith aspect of this. We're all going to face adversity, whether we're being away from home for the first time internationally in the Olympics in Rio, or you're in Geneva, Nebraska, and Coach Danny Malone's making you run a 1,200, and you're a 300-pound, 6'8" football athlete. You're like, well, I guess I have to do this. So
you're like, this is new.
I could talk to you for hours, but I guess this last just little snippet.
Yeah.
Any of our listeners, like, what is your past, your kind of your last final thoughts about your experience, and what you're looking forward to here in Tokyo?
Yeah. Man, this experience, I would say that I just have to say, like, God is so good. Like, I truly just have to end with that, because I didn't think that I was going to come back to this sport. I didn't feel like I belonged in this sport. I didn't feel like I had it to continue. And just time and time again, God has been so faithful, and the people he's put in my life, I'm so thankful for, to keep me going. And then also to come back to the sport and have the best season that I've ever had. And hopefully we just continue on to that. Just got to stay healthy and focused. But I am really blessed and just unbelievably thankful. And I would also say too, if anybody has questions about javelin or anything, they can DM me on it's at Maggie the Aggie, which is super easy to remember. So just DM me, and I'm so willing to just listen and give advice if anybody has even sport advice too. It doesn't have to be track and field. But like you said earlier, we take care of each other, and if that's some area that I can help somebody, I for sure will. And just looking forward to a good season, and I don't know, we'll see what God has in store. I don't know what to expect. I'm along for the ride.
You're along for the ride. It's a beautiful ride, and 1.7 meters for all of you listening. We're going to be praying about that, and you're going to get it, Maggie. We have all the belief. I think as you get older, all these things come together, and as you have that feeling of nervousness or anxiety, that just means it means something, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It just means something to you, and we're very excited. So you could follow Maggie Malone on all the social media sites, hashtag Javelin, hashtag Tokyo 2021. We would love it if any of you are listening to this and you feel like, hey, I want to make a donation, or hey, maybe I want to share and like our posts on our social media platforms. We would really appreciate that today, because that helps get the word out. Maggie has such a wonderful story, and I just feel like we could go on for hours. And so this Maggie, thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll have to come back. We'll come back after August.
There you go. We'll come back, and maybe I'll get to see you. I know that I'm trying to get your dad out to play some golf here in Nebraska this summer. So
you better look out, because that's all he does nowadays. So
now he better bring his A game, because I'm gonna. Yeah, I won't be easy on him. So, and I shouldn't be easy on him, but we'll have some fun with it. But this podcast today is produced by the Nebraska Greats Foundation. If you are or know of a former collegiate athlete from any of the 16 four-year colleges or universities in Nebraska who have a medical need and a financial challenge, you can refer them to me on my social platform at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can go to anygreats.org, and we have an application process. We've helped so many people, and that need can be in the form of a bed. It could be in the form of you need a trip to Mayo. Whatever it is, that money goes directly to helping those people, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. So, Maggie, thanks again for your time.
You guys, this is a great podcast.
Good luck in Tokyo.
This has been Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast serving the Nebraska Greats Foundation. You can find each episode on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Please give generously to serve Nebraska's former sports heroes in need at negreats.org. And be sure to follow the Any Greats on Facebook and Twitter.